I love Gone in 60 Seconds. I've been saying that we need to reboot that.
First thing I want to ask you, Nick, is who is this Renfield that we see in this film as opposed to the ones we've seen before elsewhere on screen?
Well, I suppose previously when you've seen Renfield on screen, it's been a closer adaptation to the novel, to Bram Stoker's Dracula novel, whereas this story takes place 100 years on from that story. Renfield has been working for Dracula for those years and is burned out, exhausted. He's working for the most narcissistic, horrible, gaslighting boss imaginable, and he's had enough, and he's kind of worn down by it, and he's trying to find a way to escape and better his life.
I'm always fascinated, like, what's like the initial like hook with this film? Like, how was it pitched to you by, like, was it Chris McKay, I imagine, who kind of pitched this one to you? What did
and Chris, you know, the Universal monsters realm had been kind of changing and switching up over the years, and this just felt like a very original, fresh take on it. And Chris McKay, I think he did such a wonderful job with Lego Batman and kind of subverting expectations with that character, that I thought he'd be, you know, very safe hands to have Dracula and Renfield in, and see where we could twist that relationship and find new things to explore within that, and put it under a new guise. So it was just a fun, original concept.
I recently spoke to Chris about this film, and he said it doesn't work without you, and he said you bring this weirdness and vulnerability to the role. Like, how does it feel, for one, that obviously he felt that about like this film doesn't exist without you, and how important was it for you to find that balance between the weird and the vulnerable within the character?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a balancing act, and Chris was so fantastic at helping me balance that throughout the shooting. It's interesting because Renfield, you know, in previous iterations as well, is kind of more crazed at those moments of the story, whereas in this moment, that element of his nature, I think, has been toned down or worn down, essentially. So he's looking for someone to he's looking for inspiration and to be inspired, and he discovers it through this story. So yeah, we're lucky we had a good script, and then just great cast around, and Chris and everyone. So it was like it was kind of a playful, easy place to kind of interpret and try things in terms of who Renfield was in this story.
Amazing. One of the things I noticed is the physicality of the character. How did you go about kind of finding that physicality, and like how important was that for you? Because obviously it's not just action, we've got comedy here as well, and it's the way you carry yourself. Yeah,
it was interesting because Renfield is obviously someone who's used to being kind of a punching bag for Dracula somewhat, and having him lash out at him and whatever else. So there are elements to that with the physicality of always kind of being slightly subservient but also protective of yourself, and just trying to make yourself small around this huge, powerful character that is Dracula. So that was kind of the physicality to begin with, and then gradually that grows and evolves and into him being a more confident kind of person.
You mentioned like a powerful character. Obviously Nicolas Cage plays Dracula in this film.
Yeah.
What was it like for you the first day on set, kind of seeing him all dolled up as Dracula?
You know what, we got to do camera tests together that were really interesting for that, because I mean, first of all, when you first see him as Dracula, it's kind of uncanny at times how similar to Bela Lugosi he could look, and in terms of also how he studied his mannerisms, and Christopher Lee, and kind of drew inspiration from their performances. But also this camera test where Chris McKay had music playing throughout, and even though there wasn't scripted dialogue or anything, we weren't doing scenes, there was just a way about how we interacted and how Nick demanded things from me, and I tried to look after him and take care of him. That was it gave us a lot of knowledge about how these characters interacted, I think. So it was a fun first way to explore doing scenes together.
You get to see some of those camera tests right in the kind of credits of this movie,
I think so. Yeah.
And there's I think it ends on a great shot of Nick kind of right at the end of the film. Obviously, you've worked with Nick previously on The Weatherman, what, 20 years ago now, which is crazy.
Nearly 20 years ago, yeah, mad.
So what are the kind of things that you had learnt from Nicolas Cage, like, back then, or is there anything you kind of picked up working with him this time around?
You know what, working with him at 14, I don't think I could fully understand or appreciate what it was, and I could walk away from that experience. It was my first time doing a film in America, and I could see his professionalism and his dedication and things like that. But working with him this time, it was just the level of detail that he goes into and where he draws inspiration from. One of the key inspirations that he used for this was Anne Bancroft in the Graduate, which you would never expect for this relationship or this character playing Dracula. And that's what's really fun, is then picking up on the different moments and what he's infusing it with. So that was probably the main thing I learned from him in this. I mean, he's always dedicated and professional, but his ability to draw from so many different avenues and to spark great ideas from that.
Is there a particular scene that you found like really fun to do with Cage?
There's an apartment scene where Renfield's gone out and he's trying to change his life, and he's got himself his own apartment, painted it, decorated it, got a new wardrobe, and Dracula turns up. He kind of gets wind of this and turns up at the apartment, and they have a confrontation in it. And that was one of the most fun scenes to shoot, and one of the ones that I was watching Nick in and just thought he was brilliant. And
yes, personal standout for me as well. I'd be remiss not to ask you, my podcast is based around the films of Nicolas Cage. I always close every interview by asking, what is your personal favourite Nicolas Cage film? Obviously you have two horses in the race, but is there anything else that...
There's so many. I mean, adaptation has got to be very high up there. Raising Arizona, Moonstruck. I love Gone in 60 Seconds. I've been saying that we need to reboot that. Those are the ones that first come to mind. Wild at Heart. Wild at Heart?
Yeah, Wild at Heart. Yeah.
Just making sure I got the right title. There's so many.
Well, Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. Congratulations on an amazing film.
Thank you so much. Nice one. Appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this video and want more of what we do, you can head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, to get weekly podcasts on all things Nicolas Cage and the wider Coppola family. Please be sure to follow us on all the socials, so that's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and TikTok, all at Caged In Pod. Remember to sign off in the comments with what you thought about the film Renfield, what you're looking forward to in Nicolas Cage's career. And as always, let me know what Bill Murray says to Scarlett Johansson at the end of Lost in Translation. And remember to like, subscribe, and ring that bell.